Thank you. Thank you for listening and watching. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Women's Giving Circle. It's great to be here. Go Gators. Bedtime. 2 words with meanings for both words. A few meanings. Bed, traditional bed. Maybe it's a cot. Maybe it's a sleeping bag. Maybe it's a pull-out couch or a futon. A few words. Talk about bed. Time, a couple words. Duration, maybe past, present, future. When you put the 2 words together, bedtime, only one meaning. Only one meaning. But so many experiences, so many examples, so many feelings, right? I'm going to ask you to trust me and close your eyes for a minute. I'm going to tell you what to think about. Think about when you were a child and you were tucked in. Or think about tucking your children in or your grandchildren in. And think about how you feel, some of the things you might remember as a ritual, something funny, something touching, something sad sometimes. Okay, open your eyes. When I was little, and I have not, and I don't know if you have the same feeling, I had not thought about my bedtime until I was 38. I had not thought about it. Nobody ever asked, nobody ever talked about it, but at 38, and the thing I remembered was, I'm one of 4. My mom came and sat at our beds, 2 girls in one room and 2 boys in another, and she made up stories, which were the best stories. To this day, I have Goodnight Moon on my bedstand, but she made up stories, and she told us a story about a little boy who was going to eat a candy bar. And as he took a bite, there was a voice from a peanut in the bar. He said, "Don't eat me, don't eat me, I'm alive, I'm alive." And we would giggle, and we would love it, and she would tickle us. And that's what I remembered when I was 38 years old. So why are we talking about bedtime? Sometimes we hear a voice, sometimes we have a moment where something comes to us. We call it an aha moment, right? Thanks to Oprah. Sometimes we listen to our aha moments, sometimes we don't. I'm so glad, I thank God every day, I listen to one of my aha moments, which, as you'll see, is the reason we were talking about bedtime. I was 38. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I wanted to be Mary Tyler Moore. I wanted to do something great. My father came over from Italy on the boat with his accent, didn't know why I wanted to do this. Why don't you have kids? Why don't you have kids? I said, "Dad, I'm not sure, but I want to be president of something. I want to work. I want to be, have adventures." So I did. I went to work in marketing, climbing the corporate ladder, single, had a great life. Will not say I didn't. I did. I loved it. Had no time to get married or have kids, and I was 38. Literally going about my business, a little voice asked me, if this is the next 30 years, is this enough? And all of a sudden, I heard myself answer myself. I said, "No, you missed something." And I heard my dad's voice, and I missed something. I missed kids. So I thought, I didn't make time to meet anyone. I didn't think it was important. Let me see if I could find a way to bring kids into my life. Now, pre-9/11 in New York, you could do what I did. Pick up the phone, call the police station. "Hi, where do they bring children who are in need of emergency services? I'd like to read in a shelter." They gave me numbers. I called up. I said, "Hi, I'm a nice person. Can I come and read to the kids?" Pre-9/11, they said, "Yes, of course, that'd be lovely, come." So I went over to emergency shelter in New York City with books. I sat on the floor. They brought the kids in, sat on the floor, and I read stories to them. I did this week after week, and I loved it. I loved it. The kids were quiet, didn't know anything about what their circumstances were. They wouldn't tell me. I didn't ask. One night, for some reason, I turned to watch where they were bringing the kids to sleep in another room. And I peered in. There was nothing to change into. They were wearing the same clothes. Some of them were crying. 2 or 3 up on a cot, on a futon. That was bedtime. So I was shocked. And that's when I heard my mother's story about Mr. Peanut. And I said, where's that for these kids? So as I went out, I turned and I asked one of the staff women, can I bring some pajamas next week? And she said, oh, that'd be lovely. Nobody brings pajamas. Sure, why don't you bring some pajamas? So I did. I sat down with the kids, different group, different books, and I asked them to stand up. I told them I had a surprise at the end of the hour. And I had them line up, and I had a big plastic bag of pajamas. I was so excited, lots of sizes, and I pulled one out for each child. As they got to the front of the line, they were standing there with a staff person. Gave them out. The staff person took the child in the pajamas to the other room to change. One little girl, halfway through, she just shook her head. She was quiet all night. Her pants were tight. And she just didn't want to say anything. She just shook her head. But she wanted to stay and watch me, give them to the other kids. I gave them out. It was just her left. So I knelt down and I said, honey, these will fit you. They're pink. You're wearing a pink top. They'll fit you. Would you like your pajamas? And she looked at me and she said, what are pajamas? And I didn't think I heard her right. And I looked at the staff person and she said, they don't know what pajamas are. Tried to keep it together. I didn't want her to think she made me cry. Helped the staff person in another room, put them on her. Big smile, and off she went. And then I lost it. And I got a real talking to from the staff who said, you have no idea, do you? I said, no, I don't. So all I could think about was that. Almost got fired. Almost had to find alternate funds because I was buying pajamas 24/7. As the universe has it, it helps a little. I met a wonderful man. He got what I was doing and he said, I get it, I'll help you. So I did marry him at that point. He said all the right things. I didn't tell him I had no money, that I was going to get fired, but he said all the right things. So riding in the subway, he said to me, you have to meditate if you want to do something with this. That's what he does. He teaches meditation. So he said, meditate, meditate. You'll see if you're supposed to do something with this thing. So on the subway, I meditated every day. You can do that on the subway. You can't block everything out. All of a sudden, one subway ride, on my way to my job that I was going to get fired at, I heard what was like a raindrop plop into my brain with 2 raindrop words, pajama program. Just like that. And I got out at the next stop, which was not my stop, and I called him and I said, I got it. And I told him the story. So off I did, spending every penny, going everywhere. He was driving me everywhere. It was crazy time. And 9/11 happened. And everything stopped everywhere, right? Even for you here, it stopped. And it stopped cold in New York City. I had gotten a call a couple months before that from a woman who was from Parenting Magazine who said, oh, I hear you're on the streets of Harlem giving out pajamas. I said, I guess so. She said, can I write a little bit, just a picture and a caption? So I said, sure. I forgot all about it. After 9/11, a couple weeks later, she called back and she said, we postponed the story because we don't know if the world's going to end. And she was serious. We were serious in New York. We didn't know if the world was going to end. A couple months later, she called and she said, we're putting the story in the December/January issue in a year later. That story ran this big. And I came home from work one day. At this point, I had a part-time job. And the doorman at my co-op in Manhattan was yelling at me and throwing packages and pushing me into the elevator. What I didn't know was so many people who got that magazine connected with the plight of these kids and sent thousands and thousands and thousands of pajamas and books. And my husband at that time and I were eating on boxes. We were getting lost. We had a one-bedroom. They were everywhere, everywhere. People's notes, cash. I could tell it was their bread and butter money. Please buy pajamas, please buy pajamas. And the first note that said, do you have a 501c3? I read it a few times. I said 501, and then there's this bracket around the C, and then there's a 3. I asked my husband, the meditator, he had no clue. So found out what it was, and I said to him, this has to be legitimate. Look at tens of thousands of people are trusting me to give these to children who want to give grants and give more and need this thing, 501c3. And it's so funny, I started to apply and prayed a lot because I didn't know what I was doing. The nice lawyer helped me. But for months after we got it, my husband was telling everyone we had our 401k. But he's still a very, very good meditator. So the reason pajama program really is successful is because we all do agree. We all do agree on what bedtime means. It doesn't just connect us to the children, which of course it does. It connects us to each other. There's this human connection that I think we are all so desperate for. At night, when we close the lights, we put on our pajamas or whatever we wear as adults in a home, we put on our pajamas and we get in bed. If it's been a great day, we feel really good and we can't sleep because it's been a great day and there's more to come. And if it hasn't been a great day, isn't it the loneliest, scariest part of the day? For me, I stay awake, and my husband's there. You might have someone right next to you, but it's still a dark, scary time if things are not great. My dad died in March. I still cry myself to sleep every other night. I can't imagine what these children are feeling. Not have ever had a mom or a dad to give them that attention or that love or that hug. Our pajamas are connecting us to them magically, invisibly, and they're connecting us to each other. I wanted to tell you some of the stories about some of the children. Early on, I got a note from Jason. Can you read that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thanks for the PJs. They're the first PJs I've ever owned, Jason.
This is framed on my desk. It reminds me every day that Jason got a pair of pajamas for us. We got a note recently from a caregiver in a shelter who said that she was trying to put a child to bed for weeks. He was going to be leaving soon. Our pajamas got there and he cried every night. He was a little boy and he wouldn't tell her why he was crying. He was crying every night. She put the pajamas on after a couple of days. She was hoping he'd be comfortable. And she asked him one last time, tell me what's the matter? Why can't you sleep? And he said, every time I go to sleep, somebody gets shot. That's where he was living. I went to give pajamas with some of our volunteers to a shelter in New York City, the Foundling. If anybody's heard of the Foundling, it's been around forever. A little boy, sort of an orphanage run by nuns, was stealing from the pile of pajamas we had that we were going to give one to each child. He was stealing all the girls' pajamas. And we were watching and we were wondering. And so we said to the caretaker, one of the nuns, do you see that little boy? Watch him. He keeps running over, swiping girls' pajamas and taking them somewhere. And she went over and she talked to him and she came over to us and she said, He and his sister were brought in last night. His sister's in ICU because their mother burned them with cigarettes. I can't imagine what bedtime is and how comforting these pajamas and a hug are. But the connection that we're making with the children is a small part. The connection we're making with each other, how we share stories, how we love the stories that we tell each other, how we have to get home for bedtime if you have kids or grandchildren, right? It's a really important time. You want to be there and make them feel safe. The stories we get from the adults show us how we're connected. One woman has 3 children. Her husband's in a wheelchair. And she was putting her youngest to bed, who was about 8. And she thought, even though her husband was in a wheelchair and he participated as much as he could, that she was really carrying the load for what he couldn't do. So she put him to bed, 8 years old, still loved to be tucked in. And she was on her way out of the room. And he said, "Mom, wait, can you come here?" So she went over and she sat by his bed. And she said, "What is it, honey?" And he said, "I want to ask you something." She waited. And took him a long time to ask her, "Mom, do you think there's any chance I could turn out like Dad?" And she came over to me and she told me that story, and she said, "I never thought at night, this is the secret, the worry he was harboring. So I can't imagine what it's like for these children who don't have someone that makes them feel safe." Somebody said I think Jackie said it made her feel safe. That's what's supposed to happen. We're supposed to feel safe. These children are supposed to feel safe. That's the connection. That's the vulnerable piece that we all feel. We all know. Somehow we relate. There is that hole in us. We could have a wonderful life. But the minute we hear a story, we meet these kids, we feel it, don't we? It feels like we've been there. We know how they feel, just instinctively. And we want to fix it. We have to fix it. So I told you about the little girl who changed everything, who said, "What are pajamas?" I've connected with her for over 18 years in my memory. I've seen her. I've wondered what she's looked like. Over the last 2 years, she's started to fade. That little girl with the too tight, too short pants started to fade. And I started to worry, how am I going to keep her alive, to connect with her, that human connection that has propelled me every day, no matter what, to keep going. So I called my niece in Chicago, who likes to draw. And I said, "Nicole, if I tell you what she looks like, can you try to draw her for me? I need to see her in more than my memory because it's fading, and I don't want that to happen. I need that connection with that girl." So I told her, I described her pigtails, her pink outfit, and she sent me a picture, and I wanted to show you. So that's her. And somebody told me, "You ever asked me if I had a name?" I said, "No." And they said, "Why don't you call her Hope?" So that's Hope. I wanted to leave you with a note from somebody in Florida who takes care of these children. And if you put it up, I will read it. You can read along. Okay. This is from a caregiver who received our pajamas, and it's 2 people just like you who brought pajamas. It may seem like another day at the shelter where anything can happen. Like a beacon of light, these boxes show up with pajamas and pajama program written on it. Without fail, by the end of the night, all the new pajamas have been put on the children from the infants to the school-aged children. There is something about new pajamas, a sense of comfort and a joy of wearing something new. For a lot of these children, bedtime means listening to a fight between their parents, maybe even having to leave in the middle of the night, maybe leaving their home with nothing but the clothes on their back. And this program brings more than just pajamas. It brings comfort and joy, comfort and safety. For those of you who have spent time shopping, packing, and delivering these pajamas, know that this act of kindness at all levels meets these children at a very, very deep place. On behalf of all the children currently in the shelter, as well as those who have left, and for those who will be with us, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and that's to you. You have touched us deeply. And remember, it's not just pajamas. So thank you for listening. Thank you for bringing all the pajamas. And, sorry. I'd like to leave you with this. I told you about my husband, the meditator. He likes to write also. And when I couldn't sleep one night, he got up and he disappeared for a while. And about an hour and a half later, he came back. And I said, "Where'd you go?" And he said, "I wrote something. I think I channeled you." So I will give you this. You can read it on your own. And it's sort of reminds me every day about hope. So I'll give you some, and you can share it. And now that I've composed myself, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them with no tears. Yes?
It sounds like your program has grown tremendously. Can you tell us a little bit about the reach that you have? Are the homeless shelters that you work with primarily in the New York area? Are they a wider region? And you must have a lot of helpers to do all that shipping.
A lot of Santa's helpers. I'll get some more for your table. Sure. We have 63 chapters. The chapters are volunteer. We're headquartered in New York with about 10 staff. And we have 4 reading centers: New York City, a suburb, New Jersey, and Atlanta. So through the chapters, we've sent out more than 5 million to date, about 250,000 every year now. And the chapters are responsible for helping us vet local partners who are the shelters. The worst case scenario would be like where I met the little girl, the emergency shelters. There are group homes, which is orphanages. There are groups that take care of children in foster care, lots of children who are being shuffled, and schools and children living below poverty level, sometimes with a family or a family member, sometimes not. So there's a scale. Each chapter has a list of the vetted places that we give to. We give here, we give in every city, in every state. There are about 3,500 plus on our vetted list. I invite you to come over and tell me or email me if you know more here. And we'll see if it's not on our list, we'll vet them and put it on our list. We have decided after almost 20 years and 18 years officially as our 501c3/401k that there's a need, because we are often asked about the parents. And the first time I was asked this question, one of the caregivers who was caring for children whose moms, pretty much the dads were out of the pictures, moms were in rehab or in prison, coming out to be reunited with their children. She asked, can I bring the moms in because they don't know that you're supposed to read to your children? And can you teach them? I was shocked. I thought it was a natural thing. It's not. So we have decided, we have an advisory board that we're putting together of doctors, therapists, social workers, to put together programs to go into these places that are bringing families back together and work with them from something as simple as you read with your children, you hold them close, put them on your lap, read them a story, to more significant programs. So if anyone wants to know more about those programs, come and see me, because we've been asked after all these years to work with these shelters and these caregivers on exactly that process. Yeah. Anybody else have a question or? Yes.
Do we have anything like this here? Do we have, I don't even know.
You don't have a chapter. If anybody wants to know about being a chapter president,
I
ask
don't
me.
even know if there's a shelter here. Does anybody?
Yeah, you do. You do. I have one name that I brought with me that's the biggest one, and then we work with them to give them pajamas and books, and that's where yours might go. Yeah.
I just wondered, how do you help with that?
How does someone in this town help?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we don't have a chapter president here. The closest one we have is in Ocala. So if anyone knows anyone who's looking for something, yes, Candace Bergen. She looks like Candace Bergen. Diane Keaton is over there.
Oh, good. I'd be interested.
Okay, we'll talk about it. Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
You specifically asked for us to bring pajamas for a certain demographic.
Teens. Yes.
Can you elaborate
Yes.
on that
Yes.
for us?
Yes. As you can imagine, the little kids are so cute and the little pajamas are adorable. The first time I had my husband drive me to a group home where there were kids who were older, I brought the box in of the small sizes because, like so many, I was ignorant. And I opened the box and the kids rushed in. And can you imagine how I felt when the big kids looked in the box, turned, and walked away? I was devastated at my selfishness. I didn't even realize it. Those kids know the score. They know. They're not going to get adopted, that's for sure, pretty much. They've come from serious, tragic situations that they were old enough to understand would impact them for the rest of their lives. So I asked you to remember the older kids, the big kids as we call them, because we have to spend a lot of money buying them, because if people don't ask, everyone gravitates to the small like I did. And I'll leave you with one story about a preteen girl. One orphanage, which has been called an orphanage forever, but they are now called a group home, maxes out at age 15, which is a hard time to then send children to a new place to live. When I was 15, I can't imagine having to leave what I knew, but they do for reasons of their own. So one girl, Rachel, was in a reading group. We went to read with them, and she was very quiet. She came over after the group. Twice a week they came, so this was Wednesday, they come Wednesday and Friday, and she came over and she said, Miss Jenny, I have a question. It's different, but they're moving me, which got me every time I hear those. They're moving me. And I won't know anything, but the girls are going to be up to 17 years old, and they're going to be wearing makeup, and I don't know how to wear makeup. Can you show me how to wear makeup? So first I was angry that a mother would ever leave a child. I had to get over that. And then I couldn't believe she was asking me if she had nobody else to ask. So I said, sure, come over on Friday after the group, stick around. So I got a girlfriend who does makeup, and after the other girls left, Rachel sat down, we made a little impromptu vanity, and I brought from home a mirror that was hanging on my wall, one of those cheap $10 mirrors from Target or Kmart, and I was holding it so she could see what my friend was doing and teaching her how, and I was crying because my heart went out to this girl who is going to now go somewhere where she knew no one and knew no other girls and was so afraid she wasn't going to fit in and didn't have a mother like I did when I was going to a new school when I was 15. To ask my mother, how do you put on mascara? And we put on mascara, and off she went. I've never heard, they wouldn't give me any information, so I pray that Rachel fit in and is doing well. So the older kids have a whole other set of issues. And I'll tell you one more quick story, because I've lost track and I apologize. But it's a happy story. In Yonkers, when we had our first reading center, we used to read with little boys who were about 5 or 6, just on the border of getting adopted. That's an okay age. It's still older for a lot of families to consider, but it happens. So these boys would come once a week to read, and there was a little boy named Sammy, just adorable little, he had lots of energy, and he loved to come and have a story read to him. So we started at 3 o'clock. I opened the door, and it was on the grounds of an orphanage, and I see Sammy running across the big grassy area because he saw me open the door. And he came running, and he jumped into the reading center, and he was out of breath, and he said, Miss Jenny, I need pajamas here. And he pulls out of his pocket a big black garbage bag. And he says, please, fill it up here. I have a foster family. They're coming to get me today, and I want to stay a really long time with them. So, of course, we stuffed that bag. He stuffed it with the wrong sizes, but he didn't care. And off he went. And word is, he's fine. So I wanted to leave you with a nice story that really does happen. So thank you again. And I'm here if you have any questions.